Hello, and welcome back to the Kingdom Hearts Heartless ranking. Last time, we ranked every Heartless from the first half of KH1 and their entire series-wide family trees. I'd recommend checking out that video for a thorough explanation of the tiers, but here's the short version. Everything above C tier is a passing grade, but as we get closer to the cutoff, Heartless have less of a reason to exist, and anything below C tier really oughtn't exist in the first place. Both design and gameplay are taken into account, but if a Heartless has notable story significance, unique mechanics or gimmicks, or design that matches the theming of its homeworld, it's likely to get a boost in the rankings. I also value uniqueness and memorability, so Heartless that are largely derivative or redundant to earlier members of the family tree are gonna have to try harder to impress. Of course, there are exceptions to everything. If you want to find out why the seemingly innocuous Living Pod is an S tier and the ostensibly inoffensive Trick Ghost is an F tier, go watch part 1 and then come back here for the rest. Now, let's get started.
You know, I sure wish the Heartless would hold still once in a while.
The Defender is a good Heartless. Like the large body, it blocks all front-facing attacks, but unlike its rotund relative, it also proves a decent threat. Between fire, blizzard, and biting attacks, the shield is the one doing most of the work here. But that same shield is going to prevent the Defender from breaching the high tier due to having the most infuriating drop rate in KH1. As cool as it is to equip a Heartless's weapon as one of your party members, the 0.2% drop rate is criminal, and all of the Lucky Strike abilities can only bring it up to a 1 in 200 chance. If you're me on my most recent playthrough, this is actually a 1 in 560 chance, so out of spite, I can't place the Defender any higher than this. The Defender's journal entry in Kingdom Hearts Union Cross says that the Heartless believes that the best offense is a good defense. The Eliminator rejects that paradigm. Few Heartless in the series are capable of striking fear into the heart of its enemies like the Eliminator. Every time you enter a room in a system sector after opening the terminal, the Eliminator has a random chance of spawning. This injects a bit of risk versus reward into system sector exploration, since harvesting the SP and prize blocks of a new room comes with the risk of spawning the Eliminator. And if you're underprepared, the Eliminator is sure to live up to its name. This thing is resistant to all types of magic, immune to all status effects, and has a massive HP bar that scales with Datasaur's level. Going in for the attack isn't easy, since the shield covers a massive area, and the Eliminator's bite attack deals quite a bit of damage. Trying to keep your distance isn't a sustainable strategy either, since the Eliminator can teleport at will. Its main attack is to fire 3 orbs of energy that will inflict a totally random status effect, some of which are devastating to Datasaur's continued digital existence. The Eliminator will mix up its pattern by firing multiple volleys in a row, or using the bite attack immediately after a ranged shot. Between that and the frequent teleportation, the Eliminator keeps you on your toes and requires constant strategy to evade. It can also follow you between rooms, which is terrifying. This fortified fiend is so powerful that it has its own trophy for defeating it. And to top it all off, the Eliminator sports a menacing blood red color palette. Ring the gong. The Armed Warrior is the second of 4 Heartless introduced in the 2014 Boys' Day event, and like the Swordsman before it, it's not leaving much of a mark. This Heartless is visually interesting and contextually unique, but it is far from the best samurai in the series. Time for another Japan exclusive, the Pleasure Dog. Unlike the Rodeo Rider, the Pleasure Dog wasn't left behind in the browser era, instead being introduced in 2018. But for whatever reason, this Heartless never made it into the international version of Union Cross. This makes the Pleasure Dog a pretty unique Heartless, though by no merit of its own. I do prefer its color scheme to that of the Armed Warrior, and its region exclusivity is at least an interesting fun fact, so I'm inclined to place the Pleasure Dog 1 tier higher. But first, an apology. I said earlier that the Cheery Ape was the only Heartless to wear socks with sandals. This is, as you can see, wholly incorrect. I hope you can find it in your hearts to forgive me. Last in the family line is a duo of Defenders, the Upright Defender and Reversed Defender. These adorned and spiky Defender variants can absorb the power of upright and reversed metals to heal themselves. I have to respect anything that tries to shake up the gameplay of Union Cross, and the relative rarity also helps the Defender Sun and Defender Moon stand out from the mobile crowd. The Wyvern might be my least favorite of the late-game KH1 Heartless. It's not bad by any stretch, but its design doesn't hold a candle to the more creative Hollow Bastion and End of the World enemies. You make a Heartless called the Wyvern, and it looks like a wyvern. They at least are fairly sturdy, due in part to their annoying habit of flying out of reach, so I'm content with dropping the Wyvern in the middle of the list. I suppose it's worth noting that the Kingdom Hearts Final Mix version of the Wyvern was originally planned to appear in the Battle of 1000 Heartless, so maybe in that timeline the Wyvern would rank higher in this exercise. Despite being one of the first Heartless families we've discussed to have 0 new variations in the key games, the Wyvern's family tree is pretty sizable, and we have Days to thank for that. Each of the variants has the same basic moveset and usually one unique elemental attack. The first of these Heartless, the Tail Bunker, has Flame Bullet Breath, a fire attack that doesn't do much to help the Tail Bunker stand out. The next flavor, the Avalanche, swaps out the Fireballs for Ice Bullet Breath, and even though it has immunity to all elements except fire, it's also not making much of a name for itself. The Wave Crest is the Waterbender in the family. It's just more of the same, but the air-to-air combat in Neverland makes the fight a bit quicker and easier. Concluding the Wyvern family's stint in Neverland is the Phantom Tail, whose element of choice is illusion. The Phantom Tail does have a gimmick to call its own. If you strike its head, it will teleport away, forcing you to be careful about the range of your attacks and which part of the Heartless you target. It's not an incredible fight, and I personally found the teleportation to be a bit on the annoying side. The Phantom Tail makes up for this with its role in the story. In Mission 77, its debut mission, Roxas searches for hidden Heartless using a treasure map. After uncovering all of the chests, he realizes that the treasure isn't the source of the Heartless, but rather Hook's greed. The ensuing fight is enough to make the Phantom Tail come out above its airborne brethren. But Days wasn't done yet, so we got the Windstorm. Exclusive to Mission 87, this Heartless appears in a group of 3. The mission is exceptionally straightforward. Walk into the town square, beat up some wind element flying boys, and walk out with some gust crystals. But I found the 3v1 to be more memorable than any of the Avalanche or Wave Crest's appearances. Not memorable enough to escape C tier though, but at least the designs are getting progressively more interesting. KH1 had Xemnas, KH2 had Lingering Will, Birth by Sleep had Young Xehanort, and KH3 had Yuzora. Even Recoded and Dream Drop Distance had Bugged Data Roxas and Julius. But Days finds its true super boss in the Dust Flyer. This Heartless, like many Days bosses, has a ludicrous amount of HP, and fighting it is a true test of patience. Every time the Dust Flyer moves, it lands with a massive shockwave that stays around for way longer than you'd expect. Lingering Will? More like Lingering Hitbox if you ask me. Anyway, if you don't jump over the shockwave, it will guarantee a random status effect. After landing, the Dust Flyer will follow up with one of 3 attacks: a Somersault Kick, an Invincible Charging Attack, or Barrage of Fireballs. All 3 can be guarded or dodged with the right positioning, but the penalty for missing your defensive option is huge. Keep in mind that the Dust Flyer only appears after you've taken down the other 6 bosses in Mission 89, and chances are that the Orcus, Power Armor, Stalwart Blade, and Veil Lizard have already eaten into your HP, spell, and item reserves. The optimal strategy is to dodge and block, hiding behind the geometry of the clock tower if needed, and to only go in for combos after certain attacks you know are safe. You'll need to spend most of your time in the air, both to dodge the powerful shockwaves and to avoid the continued supply of shadows that can combo you into one of the Dust Flyer's attacks. Once you get a feel for the rhythm of the combat, I actually think it's quite fun, but the fight goes on for about 10 times as long as it should. I never, ever want to fight the Dust Flyer again for as long as I live, and for that I have to put it in F tier, but understand that I still hold a lot of respect for this stupidly buff Wyvern. Like the Wyvern, the Wizard's design is exactly what the title implies, but it comes equipped with a mechanically interesting moveset. As its name suggests, the Wizard attacks with a variety of magic spells, and its passive ability to absorb fire, blizzard, and thunder damage adds a neat twist to any encounter where this Heartless appears. In Recoded, it loses its elemental immunities, but is still a very disruptive force if not dealt with. It's not fantastic, and in KH1 the Wizard is susceptible to the same atrocious grind as the Defender, but it's still a notch above the Flotsam and Jetsam of the half-pint tier. Speaking of pint-half-empty Heartless, the High Wizard. It appears throughout the majority of worlds in Union Cross and Dark Road as a generic magic-based Heartless, and while I can't say it fails in that front, the High Wizard doesn't have anything to call its own. I think the wand is fun though. Calling back to the Rush, Shred, and Trick ghosts from earlier, we have the Savage Wizard, Noble Wizard, and Trick Wizard. These mages protect themselves and their allies from power, speed, or magic attribute medals, and they're also among the last Heartless to be put in Kingdom Hearts Union Cross, arriving during Valentine's Day 2021. I also quite like all of their designs, so the Wizard, Savage, Noble, and Trick can surpass the trio of ghosts and make a home for themselves in high C tier. The Behemoth family has a bit of a history. In the original Kingdom Hearts, the Behemoth was the sole member of its clan, but in Kingdom Hearts Final Mix, the Arch-Behemoth took its place at End of the World, and the Destroyed Behemoth replaced it in the Hades Cup. With respect to the ordinary Behemoth, I like it for what it is. It's an appropriately intimidating monster to appear within the final keyhole, and any Heartless that you can climb on is cool in my book. Yet the fight isn't truly interesting beyond that, since the Behemoth just kinda sits there as you wail on it. It also makes an appearance in Recoded's Olympus Coliseum Labyrinth, in case anyone cares. Overall, it's a solid Heartless that gets the job done, even if it lacks an extraordinary moveset. As mentioned, the Arch-Behemoth is the variant found in End of the World in KH Final Mix, and it doesn't need to be here. Its moveset is completely unchanged, and it annoys me to no end that the Arch-Behemoth is the weaker of the two. But even a bargain bin Behemoth is more memorable than most Heartless, especially given its placement at the start of the final hallway of limitless pain and suffering. But memorability isn't always a boon, and taking down the Arch-Behemoth is more of a chore than a battle. As the 40th seed in the Hades Cup, the Destroyed Behemoth's resume is pretty bare. All it has going for it is a cool but confusing paint job, given that it still doesn't have any fire attacks in its arsenal. But take a closer look, and you'll find that the Destroyed Behemoth found a second life as the Behemoth Omega in Union Cross. I'll place it next to its Final Mix Behemoth brother. The Hocus Pocus is the last of the Behemoth bloodline, and I'm a fan. As far as Halloween Heartless go, the Hocus Pocus is one of the more intricate and inspired of the bunch. It also wins massive bonus points with me for using Spooks of Halloween Town as its raid boss theme in the original Kingdom Hearts key. Take a seat in B tier, Hocus Pocus, you've earned it.
Everything's fine. Not a Heartless in sight.
The Pot Spider family tree is split into two main portions, the Pots and the Spiders, and both have some pretty serious contenders. The Pot Spider itself is ranking pretty high. It's the closest thing the Kingdom Hearts series had to a mimic for the first 8 years, and sometimes simplicity is key. It also earns extra points for theming, and for being the only common Heartless in Kingdom Hearts VCast whose AI isn't easily exploited by preempting the enemy's attacks with Keyblade swings. A tier for you. Moving one step larger, we have the Pot Scorpion. As far as the Kingdom Hearts Final Mix Heartless are concerned, the Pot Scorpion is fairly straightforward. Evade its poison shots until you get the opportunity to block its melee attacks, leaving it open to attack. I always found this to be one of the more fun Final Mix fights, even if Aroga invalidates his entire moveset. It seems though that the Pot Scorpion shares the organization's fondness for jar-breaking mini-games, since before you can challenge the Heartless, you have to expose it among the 12 pots. Picking the Pot Scorpion's pot last will greatly increase the reward, and because the Scorpion's hiding spot is the only immovable jar of the bunch, it's not the awful RNG check that it first appears to be. Well done. The largest of Agrabah's pottery critters is the Pot Centipede. Every time I replay KH1, I always forget about this boss fight, but it's not actually a bad encounter. Breaking the centipede apart into pot spiders is decently satisfying, and its appearance moves the Jasmine plot forward, so it's better than I usually give it credit for. Moving on to the spider side of the lineage, we have the Barrel Spider. Rather than a ceramic pot, the Barrel Spider takes residence in a keg of gunpowder, making it both a threat and an asset on the battlefield depending on who's next to it when it explodes. Of course, you can expedite the process with some well-placed fire magic. Depending on the world the Barrel Spider appears in, the appearance of the wood will change to blend in with the environment, and they even introduce new variants for Rechain of Memories. That's a level of attention to detail that I appreciate in a Heartless. The Pot Spider and Barrel Spider have another cousin, Recoded's Blocks Bug. The Blocks Bug is not a bug blocks, but rather a Heartless that adapted to the digital environment and disguised itself as one of the glitches. That's cool, and it's a lovely example of how Heartless species change their forms to match the world they are in. In terms of combat, the Data Spiders aren't leagues removed from their corporeal counterparts, but they can still enjoy a spot in the high tier alongside them. The blocks bug itself has 3 variants, the first of which is the metal bug. Every once in a while, it will enter an invulnerable state and deflect physical attacks like the metal blocks, but it's so infrequent and inconsequential that I can't really say it's worth its own Heartless. As it stands, it's just a worse version of its buggy brother. Moving further down the tier list, we have the Danger Bug. This Heartless is annoying. On paper, having an enemy that deals contact damage is a fine gimmick, since it forces the player to rethink their strategy and use ranged attacks instead of mashing. However, between the Danger Bug's propensity to spawn on top of Datasora, and the instant death trap of being stuck between a bounce blocks and a Danger Bug, this yellow crawler far overstays its welcome. Finally, we have the Prize Bug. These Heartless play a unique gameplay role, only appearing in the Data Recovery segment and Hollow Bastion Part 2. By chasing down the prize bugs scattered across the worlds in Riku's head, you can recover Datasaur's Matrix power. Restoring your lost stat bonuses by hunting down weak Heartless before they can flee is a fun change in gameplay. My only wish is that more of the ordinary prize blocks were replaced with the bugs. The prize bug might be the Data equivalent of a walking treasure chest, but its appearance contributes to a distinctly unique section of gameplay. The mushrooms are among the most gimmicky families of Heartless. The white mushroom has the distinction of being one of the few truly pacifist Heartless. In Kingdom Hearts and Chain of Memories, it will perform charades corresponding to one of the magic spells. Casting the correct spell 3 times will win the Heartless over, and in KH1, using the same type of magic all 3 times will reward Sora with an exclusive arts material. It's a fun puzzle Heartless that forces the player to think about the different kinds of magic they have available to them, so it's going to land pretty high on the tier list. I also have it written down here that the white mushroom has its own gummy ship. Make of that what you will. The black fungus is the opposite of the white mushroom in many ways, including its position in this ranking exercise. In combat, the black fungus will either use its one basic poison cloud attack or turn itself invincible. This makes the encounter an uninvolved waiting game. The rare synthesis materials only drop if you finish them off with a critical hit, and while there are abilities that expedite the process, it's still a bothersome gimmick that doesn't really add much to the game. If the black fungus had several attacks that required skill to avoid, or if there was a way to remove their invulnerability with a certain technique, then I'd reconsider my stance, but as it stands, this encounter is a waste of my time. Like the black fungus, I have no love for the rare truffle. The rare truffle only drops its prizes if you juggle it in the air enough times, and while I'm usually a fan of the Grandstander minigame, this Heartless is just annoying. Using a Roga next to a wall circumvents the encounter entirely. Now that's good game design. I don't want to spend any more time talking about the rare truffle, so I'm going to move on. But unfortunately, I'm moving on to the pink Agaricus, and these mushroom siblings are going to go 3 for 3 in F tier. The pink Agaricus can appear in Deep Jungle's treehouse or Atlantica's undersea cave once the 3 white mushroom Heartless are appeased with stop magic. The goal is to hit the Heartless as many times as possible while it's under the effect of the stop spell, and while I usually reward unique puzzles and gimmicks, I'm fed up with the pink Agaricus. I know that there are consistent strategies for beating it if you equip the right abilities, but even so, I take little pleasure in the encounter. Watching the tech points pop up in rapid succession is a pleasing sight, and I know this Heartless probably deserves to be higher, but I'm going with my gut on this one. I'm sorry. Here to break the streak is the gold Tricholoma, a mushroom that actually earns my respect. Like the Eliminator, the gold Tricholoma has a random chance of appearing in system sectors and scales with Datasaur's level. The Heartless will vanish and shroud itself in poison clouds to protect itself, and if you manage to track it down, it will relinquish a large sum of SP when slain. Thanks to its rarity and lucrative drops, it always feels like a special occasion when the gold Tricholoma appears in a system sector. We're not breaking any boundaries with this Heartless, but it's a good pick for the high tier. Now, we do have another member of the mushroom family, well, another 13 members, but we'll get around to those later. For now, let's focus on finishing off the remaining KH1 Heartless.
Why are you siding with the Heartless?
One of the strong points of KH1 Heartless design was tapping into the idea of the unknown. Heartless were meant to be confusing and disturbing, these unsettling creatures from an unknown realm. Few Heartless capture this essence as perfectly as the Angel Star. What is this twisted, four-winged, three-eyed eldritch nightmare? Compared to other endgame Heartless, its body is oddly mechanical, which is all the more unsettling. Its bright angel wings lie juxtaposed to the hellish landscape of the end of the world, and its motions are quick and erratic. In combat, the Angel Star is a force to be reckoned with, between its multiple devastating magic attacks, its disruptive wing guard that deflects melee strikes, and its passive ability to absorb thunderspells and resist other magic. While a little Aurora will go a long way, Angel Stars can be a real threat when teamed up with melee-focused Heartless, and I definitely know they were the cause of many deaths on my first playthrough. The Angel Star is the only Hollow Bastion or End-of-the-World Heartless that didn't come back for calmer days, so I was positively popping off when they made their surprise return for the finale of Recoded. This is definitely a top 10 Heartless for me, no question. Our next family of Heartless starts with another heavy hitter, the Neo Shadow. It has it all: a menacing design, a unique and challenging gameplay segment, and a truly iconic story appearance. Funnily enough, I think the Neo Shadow is at its strongest when it's going down in one hit. The sheer satisfaction given by shredding through Neo Shadows on Mission 93 Believe is enough to raise this Heartless one additional tier. Even though the Neo Shadow has fallen off as the series has gone by, now being likened to Dusk in terms of their abilities, its legacy is strong enough to place it next to its shadow brother in the top tier. The Nova Shadow is not as well remembered as its smaller cousin. The lines on its body are red instead of blue, and it's decently larger in size, but other than that, it's just a Neo Shadow without any story significance or interesting combat segments. However, a giant red Neo Shadow is still one gnarly Heartless, and it's one of the encounters that sticks out the most to me in Days, so up in A tier it goes. The Dark Ball is a good Heartless. It's iconic, a little goofy, and has an incredible model in Kingdom Hearts V-Cast. It taps into the KH1 Heartless design philosophy of being creepy and confusing, especially with its strange and erratic methods of attack. But after Kairi's rescue, the Dark Ball is just treated as the standard issue Heartless foot soldier, and being a replacement Shadow isn't a good look for anybody. On top of that, I have to admit that it's overshadowed by a lot of its late game KH1 siblings, pun possibly intended. The Dark Ball's great, but not the top of the heap. This is the Dark Ball's only relative, the Circus Balloon. What a funny little guy. The Circus Balloon was made for the 2nd anniversary of Kingdom Hearts Key. I have a soft spot for this one, but I can't in good faith put it above C tier. While we're here, let's talk about the Buncho Balloons. It's not in the same family as the last two, but there are only so many opportunities to talk about Balloon Heartless. In contrast to the admittedly lackluster performance of its balloon brother, the Buncho Balloons is a pretty decent addition to the Heartless forces. Similarly to the Barrel Spider, the Buncho Balloons is a walking, or I suppose floating, explosive. It hardly has any HP to speak of, and will detonate as soon as it's defeated, typically destroying any enemies around it. That makes it more mechanically distinct than most Union Cross Heartless, so it can earn a respectable position in B tier. Up next is the Menace of Medford, Kurt Zisa. For Heartless so irrelevant that its name was chosen by a marketing contest, it might come as a surprise that I have this dual-wielding demon high up in my personal pantheon of KH bosses. There is truly nothing like the Kurt Zisa fight. The battle is split up into two distinct phases: Silence form, where Kurt Zisa will lock Sora out of using any magic or summons, and Reflect Barrier form, where it summons a barrier that blocks all physical damage. As the Heartless alternates between these two forms, the player has to constantly switch up their strategy. In the first phase, since magic is a no-go, the only way to deal damage is by hitting the orbs on Kurt Zisa's hands with a Keyblade combo, but those Kopeshes are sharp. If you get hit, the only way to heal is with your limited supply of items, since Cure is off the table until the next phase. But all of Kurt Zisa's chops and slices can be avoided with practice, and learning the dodge timings is majorly satisfying. In the second phase, Kurt Zisa's magic attacks are more easily avoided, but you have to rely on your limited MP supply to deal all of your damage. However, striking its magic barrier will generate MP orbs, rewarding you for making a risky approach and ensuring the player is never out of options. This is a fight that forces you to adapt and face the boss on its terms, and in my opinion, it more than succeeds. Plus, the close camera and unique movement engine of KH1 makes you really feel the weight of the battle. And I've been so busy talking about the combat, I haven't even gotten a chance to mention how well Kurt Zisa complements the environment of Agrabah, with a bonus parallel to Jafar's Cobra Staff. This Heartless is a keeper. Some of you might be shocked to learn that Kurt Cisa is not the only Heartless in its family. In 2019, Kingdom Hearts Union Cross introduced the Savage Vanguard, probably from Holtzville or something. It's not quite on the same level as the original, it has 4 arms instead of 6, and its kopeshes don't have holes at the end of the blade. But any Kurt Cisa callback is a welcome addition, and frankly unexpected, so I'll give the Savage Vanguard a spot in the top of C tier. 2 years later, the family line was expanded again with the Savage Vanguard Omega. Unlike most Omega variants, the Savage Vanguard Omega doesn't just have a new coat of paint, gaining back the missing limbs and stronger weapons. Heartless still isn't much more than a wannabe Kurt Cisa, and I'm not a huge fan of the color scheme, but I respect the effort put into it, especially compared to other Omega raid bosses. The Invisible. If you ask someone to think of a badass Heartless, I'd wager the Invisible is at the top of most people's lists. I mean, it straight up has hardcore written on its sword. That's literally hardcore, like the core of a walnut. And sure, the kanji was removed from the blade in Union Cross, but it got these sick flaming heels to compensate. The Invisible isn't all bark though, it's also a challenging foe in every game it's in. In KH1, it's one of the most powerful enemies in the End of the World. In Days, it's introduced as an optional enemy in an otherwise easy mission, and will absolutely roll you if you're not prepared. In Recoded, it has very strong ranged attacks and is one of the most dangerous bugged enemies. And in Melody of Memory, it's among the 25% of enemies who are given the strong attack type. From the heart-shaped hole in its chest, to its terrifying first appearance at the End of the World, to its notable longevity, the Invisible has earned itself an easy spot in the top tier. Take everything I just said about the design and challenge, add in one of the coolest story moments in the series, and you have yourself the Orcus. Or the Ogre, as it's known in Union Cross and Dark Road. Somehow, they created a design more menacing than the Invisible, and I will never get over the fact that the Halloween Town scene where Saïx manipulated Roxas and Xion into fighting each other using the Orcus was excluded from the HD Days movie. We've already added an extra 14th tier for the lowest of the low, but in the spirit of Xion, let's add one more tier where we can slot the Ogre in its rightful first place. To wrap up the Heartless lines introduced in Kingdom Hearts, let's take a look at the largest Heartless family in the series, the affectionately fan-named Prismatic Melodies. These flying mage Heartless follow the naming scheme of a color and a type of music. Each Prismel is also associated with a specific element or magic spell. I have a soft spot for this group of Heartless, so I'll be ranking most of them pretty favorably, but there are still some stinkers in the group. So let's get started with the first of the 38 pre-Missing Link siblings, the Red Nocturne. The Red Nocturne is one of the 4 founding members of the family, and the first of many fire elemental melodies. It tends to float close to the ground and charge up a ranged fireball attack, making it a prime target for blizzard magic. Simple as it may be, the Red Nocturne is an iconic Heartless with a timeless design. It's also the only member of the family to get a gummy ship blueprint, so there's that. The Yellow Opera is KH1's Thunder Wielder, and it lands in a similar spot to its red sibling. It has one basic elemental attack, though its huge startup time makes it easily avoidable. The Yellow Opera is also the only returning member of the family in Days, and it gains a new electric headbutt technique which is marginally more effective. Its ability to absorb thunder spells can be rather significant in group settings, and it has more canon appearances than any other Prismatic Melody. Like the Red Nocturne, its legacy is enough to earn it a spot in B tier. Skipping to the last KH1 Prismel, it's the Green Requiem. It specializes in cure magic, and I've been on the record to appreciate any Heartless that interacts with its allies. They can also absorb all kinds of magic, so their presence makes an impact in any battle they appear in. The Green Requiem isn't exceptionally creative or extraordinary, David Russell notwithstanding, but it's going to rank ahead of its siblings, though not by leaps and bounds. I've saved the Blue Rhapsody for the last of the original 4, and that's because I'm rocketing it up to high A tier. Okay, so in Kingdom Hearts, it doesn't really outperform its siblings. It hops around and either shoots a slow ice-based projectile, or whacks you with its dinky little hat. Yet there's more to the Blue Rhapsody than meets the eye. For instance, it's one of 3 Heartless to appear in 11 out of 12 Union Cross worlds alongside the Soldier and Possessor, and in the mobile game, the Blue Rhapsody takes the mantle of the Healer. The reason for that is because the Green Requiem was absent from the original Kingdom Hearts key, and wouldn't appear well into Union Cross's lifespan. But I'm beating around the bush here. The real reason that the Blue Rhapsody soars to the top of the rankings is because of Kingdom Hearts V-Cast. If you haven't watched my video on that, all I will say is that the Blue Rhapsody challenges our expectations in unique and creative ways, and the impact of that encounter has cemented its position as my favorite Prismatic Melody. Long live V-Cast. Before we can move on to KH2's additions to the family, we have to stop at Kingdom Hearts Final Mix's Black Ballad. I guess you can consider it another lightning element Prismatic Melody, given that it has a shock attack and drops lightning stones, but it's really its own thing. Instead of using elemental attacks, the Black Ballad challenges Sora to a round of the Shell game. 5 of the Heartless will fly around the bamboo thicket, and if you can track the real Black Ballad 4 times in a row, you will be rewarded with a lightning stone. Its movements are pretty quick, and I remember it getting to the point where I ended up repeatedly pausing and unpausing to track it. However, I didn't have any problem with it on my last playthrough and recording attempts. I'm not sure if it was somehow nerfed in the PC port, or I'm just better than I used to be, but any contempt I once had for this minigame is now long gone. The Black Ballad can take its rightful spot as one of the most interesting members of the family. The Silver Rock is the only spellcaster in the family to specialize in light magic. It looks more white than silver to me, but the rock has enough variety in its moveset to stand on its own. Plus, the shift shot reaction command is hugely satisfying. It's not as iconic as the Red Nocturne and Yellow Opera, but the gameplay side of things makes up for it. It's about drive forms, it's about power stones, we stay heartless, we devour... What am I even doing? The Emerald Blues is comparatively less interesting. It uses wind-based attacks, ranging from small and insignificant to large and insignificant. While the arrow spell is a welcome addition to the family, I find this Heartless to be highly ignorable. However, I very much appreciate the Halloween Town and Space Paranoids variants, which is enough to push the Emerald Blues to the upper half of the half pints. Remove all of the praise I just gave the Emerald Blues, and you have the Spring Metal. Another Cavern of Remembrance reskin, the Spring Metal is pretty forgettable. It doesn't have the interesting world changes of the Emerald Blues, and at this point the freshness of using arrow magic has worn off. It can be a bit disruptive if you don't take care of it quickly, mostly due to its frequent use of the massive tornado attack, but I'm really stretching to write a full third sentence about the Spring Metal. I suppose since there wasn't much effort put into this Heartless, I won't spend too much effort ranking it. There's only one Prismatic Melody in Kingdom Hearts 2 that I would consider particularly memorable, and unfortunately, that is the Crimson Jazz. Unlike most members of the family, the Crimson Jazz is a tough late-game Heartless rather than a common early-game one. It attacks with large explosive charges, which I choose to interpret as representing the flare line of spells. But boy howdy is this thing a nuisance. The Crimson Jazz's trademark attack is summoning mines, and it seems like Sora's trademark is getting hit by them. These can be small mines that surround Sora and combo him into the air, or large mines that chase after you. No matter which type of mine the Crimson Jazz summons, it supersedes anything else you are doing in combat and makes killing these Crimson Mages your first priority. Of course, these monsters often appear in groups of 2 or 3, and there's nothing stopping them from swarming you with multiple batches of mines at once. If you eliminate a Crimson Jazz, which takes longer than it should thanks to its unnecessarily long HP bar, the mines it summoned don't despawn. Running away isn't an option either, at least not without maxed out movement abilities, since the tracking on the mines is unreal. The Crimson Jazz is just a big pain to deal with, and I frown every time I see one. There was never any question that this Heartless was going right to the bottom of the tier list. Kingdom Hearts 358 Days Over 2 introduced a convenient 7 Heartless to the line of mages. The first of these, the Scarlet Tango, I consider a distinctly average Heartless. It's another fire-based Prismel with only one attack to its name, which isn't even unique to it as a Heartless. The Scarlet Tango is about iteration over innovation, and it's going to be ranked average because of it. The Grey Caprice, on the other hand, is one of the most innovative spellcasters in the clan. Its projectiles have no element to call their own, instead causing Roxas to switch positions with the Heartless upon impact. This does a good job of throwing a wrench into the player's game plan without being obnoxious, and the wacky and confusing spell fits in with the Grey Caprice's homeworld of Wonderland. All in all, a good Heartless. Despite harnessing the element of time, the Striped Aria isn't very interesting. It invests a lot more into HP and defense than their siblings, and their time bullets can rewind to Roxas's own defensive capabilities, but at the end of the day, the striped aria is only mildly more interesting than the average Heartless. It doesn't help that their only attack takes about an hour and a half to charge up, so there's really no reason to pay this Heartless any attention. The Sapphire Elegy is another mildly unique member of the family. Its element of choice is illusion, and it moves around by bouncing like the Blue Rhapsody did in KH1. When hit head-on, the Sapphire Elegy will warp to a new location, which can make it difficult to take down quickly. It's not revolutionary, but it's among the stronger of the C-tier Heartless. The Pink Concerto has another one of the Oddball Days elements, Flower. The Heartless inherits the headbutt attack of the Sapphire Elegy and adds a poison-emitting move to its repertoire, and also boasts an unusually long HP bar. However, you would have to actively try to get hit by the Pink Concerto's attacks, and ultimately it's one of the more unremarkable Prismels. Almost at the end of the day's crew, just 2 more to go. The first of these is the Turquoise March, a water-based Heartless exclusive to Neverland. It's pretty weak, and the ability to fly makes its attacks fairly easy to dodge, so the Turquoise March can sit next to its siblings Scarlet and Pink in C tier. Ending this wave, we have the Emerald Serenade. It appears in 3 missions as the target enemy. The Emerald Serenade does not attack, instead choosing to fly laps around the room. It's quick enough to where physical combos are largely ineffective, and its speed only increases as it takes damage, so the optimal strategy is to sit and wait for the Emerald Serenade to come to you. It's very easy to take down with a handful of Blazzaras, but the process is more tedious than anything else. This is also the first Heartless in the family to reuse a color in its name, so I'm docking points for that as well, though I guess it could have been an intentional choice to tie together the 2 non-aggressive Prismels. Moving on to Kingdom Hearts Key, the Violet Waltz's design is about as straightforward as it gets. While you might think it casts some kind of dark or poison magic, its actual role is to heal and boost the defense of its fellow Heartless. Look, I don't really have much to say about this one, it's C tier. After creating 1 normal Prismatic Melody, the enemy design team for Kingdom Hearts Key apparently forgot how to make more, and instead created 13 Heartless that defy the family naming convention. Number 1 is the Wicked Watermelon. I know it really doesn't deserve to place very high, but I find the Wicked Watermelon endlessly amusing, so I'm bumping it up to high C tier. Likewise, I cannot express how funny it is that the large watermelon exists. This is stupid, and no one wanted it, but being silly and unexpected is enough to make it stand out from the crowd. Introduced in the summer of 2013 alongside the watermelons are the Festive Fireworks and Large Fireworks. And while I actually think their designs are quite pretty, it just doesn't hit in the same way that the watermelons do. But in summer of 2014, the designers decided they had to one-up last year's Prismatic Melody offerings, so I present to you the Huge Watermelon and Huge Fireworks. Understand that when I rank the Huge Watermelon at the top of C tier, this is a purely emotional response. A Heartless called the Huge Watermelon is conceptually hilarious, and, as an enemy, not in the least bit intimidating. I will say though, I like the flowers and cute secondary watermelon. Once again, the Fireworks subfamily doesn't land nearly as hard, and the Huge Fireworks doesn't even have a unique body, it's just the Large Fireworks with extra sparkles. Now, I was pretty generous with those last few, but it reaches a point where even I can't excuse these Key Series Heartless on charm alone. The Jack-O-Lantern always felt to me like the laziest addition to the family. There are plenty of ways to create a Heartless out of a pumpkin, and this design really doesn't do much with the idea. It's just more boring than it had to be. The round rice cake at least tries a bit harder than the Jack-O-Lantern, but I can't say it has much to show for its efforts. I mean, Heartless based on traditional Japanese New Year's decoration isn't a bad idea, and I prefer the more elaborate large rice cake, but both of these Heartless aren't exactly memorable, so C tier it is. At first, I had similar feelings towards the Bitter Macron and Mighty Macron, one of the Valentine's Day White Day duos. But in the Union Cross late game, these 2 Heartless were repurposed as enemies in Candy Kingdom, and I could not imagine a more perfect fit. If you had told me these 2 were specifically made for Sugar Rush, I would not bat an eye. So Game Central Station redeems these scrumptious spellcasters, bringing our segment on food-based Prismatic Melodies to a close. And rounding out the Kingdom Hearts Key originals, we have the Swaying Spook and Wandering Spook. Like their more eccentric mobile game siblings, these Heartless were mostly reserved for special events. I don't know, I think their design is cute, this one has a goofy little pumpkin hat. Look, let's just call it C tier and agree to move on. Guess what? We're in Union Cross proper now, and Square Enix remembered how to make actual Prismatic Melodies. The first new contestant is the Emerald Sonata, which is a more flamboyant version of the Green Requiem, and also the third Prismel to use the color emerald. It was introduced alongside the Amber Opera, a similarly transitioned yellow opera. These are the first Prismatic Melodies since the Crimson Jazz to give off an intimidating aura, and I hold both of them in pretty high regard. The Emerald Sonata also gets a slight boost due to Kingdom Hearts Dark Road, where defeating it heals Xehanort's HP, one of 4 enemies to have a special kill bonus, and the only one to have a bonus other than extra BP. Completing the Electric Evolutionary line is the Apricot Opera. While its physical design deviates from the traditional Prismatic Melody pattern, the journal explicitly clarifies that it is, indeed, a variant of the Yellow Opera. In Japanese, the Heartless is called the Juan Brilliant Opera, referring to a slightly lighter shade of yellow. Transforming a weak and very much unintimidating Heartless into something as fierce as the Apricot Opera is exactly the kind of creativity I want to see in a new Heartless, and having a Prismatic Melody serve as a boss is a unique idea. It's nothing groundbreaking, per se, but it holds its own up in B tier. As a final send-off to the many Prismatic Melodies of the mobile games, we have the Brilliant Opera. Its full Japanese name is the Vert Brilliant Opera, referring to a shade of bright green and acting as a parallel to the Juan Brilliant Opera. I really love the plant-like design, so I'm going to place it perhaps a bit higher than it deserves, in low B tier. The last 4 members of this Heartless family are brought to us by Kingdom Hearts 3. We have the Vermilion Samba with fire magic, the Marine Rumba with water, the Gold Beat with lightning, and the Malachite Bolero with arrow. I think the physical designs are all a step up from KH2 and Days, but all 4 of them take a really long time to cast any of their spells, so you can just ignore them without much consequence. Because of this lackluster gameplay, I'll place them all in C tier, but since I found the Malachite Bolero to be generally more competent than its KH3 siblings, it can go in a higher division. And with that, the largest Heartless family is complete, at least until Missing Link.
It's your Heartless, Sora.
We're not quite done with the first Kingdom Hearts yet. It's time to rank the remaining story-significant Heartless, and first on the list is Sora's own. And how could I possibly rank this any lower than S tier? Sure, its physical form is just a shadow, but you get to control it. I repeat, you get to control the Heartless. Factoring the emotional weight behind this segment of KH1, and the interesting lore implication it has for the strength of Sora's heart, Sora's Heartless has earned its spot at the top end of the list. But when we think about a Heartless version of Sora, the Hollow Bastion bug probably isn't the first thing that comes to mind. That honor belongs to Anti-Sora. And what an incredible Heartless! From a story standpoint, it represents Riku's full acceptance of the Dark Powers, his grim determination to rescue Kairi, and the deterioration of his relationship with Sora. Design-wise, it's menacing and creepy and everything that a dark reflection of the protagonist should be. The gameplay is also up to snuff, being a memorable boss fight with a decent amount of variety and challenge. On top of all that, Anti-Sora is one of 2 Heartless to make an appearance in Dream Drop Distance, serving as the lead-up to one of the most unexpected final story bosses of all time. Put this all together and you get an easy pick for the S tier. Remember Shadow Sora? This fellow appears in Neverland only before the Anti-Sora fight, and I like its style. It's pitch black, lacking even Heartless's signature glowing yellow eyes, and it doesn't wield a weapon. Shadow Sora just dances, taunting you. It can also make Sora drop money, but it's easy enough to defeat that it doesn't become annoying. Shadow Sora is just classic KH1 weirdness, and I'm here for it. How do I rank Ansem? The Seeker of Darkness himself, and I'm supposed to put him on the same tier list as the Metal Bug and Large Watermelon? I don't think it's possible for Ansem to go anywhere but double S tier. Story significance, design, gameplay, any way you slice it, Ansem comes out on top. Including him on this list at all is kind of against the spirit of the exercise, but I am nothing if not thorough. Ansem can sit next to the Orcus, but with a big ol' asterisk next to his name. I don't think I need to spend much time on the World of Chaos. In the story department, it rides on Ansem's coattails, but that's still enough to place it at the top of the heap. I've never been a huge fan of the boss battle itself, I just don't find the fight very engaging, but its design is so intricate and so perfect at capturing the essence of an otherworldly nightmare creature that it's being placed in S tier, no question. And finally, the Heartless you have all been waiting for, the Bit Sniper. I love this little guy. Sure, its moveset isn't anything particularly crazy, but Heartless exclusive to the final Ansem fight is still more noteworthy than most. And here's the fun fact for you, did you know that the Bit Sniper's model and animations are inside the files of Melody of Memory? It seems like it, along with 3 more Heartless I'll mention later, were all planned for inclusion in Melody of Memory stages, but were cut for some reason or another, and that's a shame. Anyway, it really has no right to go this high, but I'm placing the Bit Sniper at the top of A.
Talk about Heartless! I can't believe you!
Time for another pop quiz. Which Heartless is this? If you said Behemoth, I'm going to need you to be more specific, since the standard Behemoth is purple. If you said the Destroyed Behemoth or Behemoth Omega, I'm afraid you're colorblind. If you said the Hocus Pocus, I'm afraid you're the normal kind of blind. If you said the Arc Behemoth, you're closer to the right hue, but still just as wrong. If you said the Kingdom Hearts Final Mix recolor of the Behemoth, I applaud the effort, but the Heartless we're looking for is gray, not blue. No, this Behemoth is a unique design made for Kingdom Hearts 2, which, if you might recall, does not feature any member of the Behemoth clan. This design can be seen alongside the Final Mix Wyverns in promotional trailers showcasing the Battle of 1000 Heartless, and the model for this unnamed Behemoth variant is still in the game's files. You can actually find this version of the Behemoth in the Kingdom Hearts Recoded intro, which uses the same footage as the early KH2 trailers. And before anyone asks, I don't know, B tier. Nothing if not thorough. Congratulations! We have now taken a look at every Heartless introduced in the original Kingdom Hearts, and most of their descendants. This totals just over 175 different enemies, meaning that nearly a third of all Heartless in the series can trace their ancestry back to KH1. We still have a lot of enemies to cover, including some of my favorites and least favorites, but I'll save that for a later date. Looking at the tier list in terms of origin, we can see that the original Kingdom Hearts has a wide spread of Heartless across all tiers, gravitating towards the higher end and with a stranglehold on the S and A tiers. Days, Key, and Union Cross litter the board with derivative and underwhelming Heartless, but with a few notable outliers breaching the top of the list. The few KH2 and KH3 reps performed comparatively poorly. I believe that's because those games' strengths lie in their original designs rather than their new additions to the KH1 family trees, but we'll see in the next video if that hypothesis holds up. Now, let's take one last look at the tiers before my final message. And so, we end the KH1 portion of this exercise with a decently full top and high tier, a predictably bloated middle tier, and a respectfully sparse bottom tier. A lot of Heartless we looked at today were aided in the rankings by their legacy and lasting impact, so it will be interesting to see how things change as we move into entirely original modern creations. I'll save further holistic analysis for the end of the video series, so until then, feel free to tell me how much this list sucks and why your favorite Heartless should have been at the top. Toodles.